of attacking her at a crowded family barbecue, I looked to him for defense. Instead, he gripped my arm coldly and whispered, "Apologize to her right now or leave my sight." The entire yard went dead silent, 20 pairs of eyes staring at me like I was a monster. I didn't shed a single tear. I just calmly turned around, walked out to my car, and drove away. My husband and his daughter smiled, thinking they had finally broken me and won the ultimate power struggle. They thought I was driving home to pack my bags in shame. What they didn't know was that the house they were returning to wasn't actually his anymore. Follow my story until the end to see how a single plate of spilled food exposed a multi-million-dollar betrayal. The sizzling smell of charred burgers and sweet barbecue sauce filled the humid afternoon air, but the atmosphere in the backyard felt completely freezing. My name is Eleanor. I am 42 years old, and as an independent forensic accountant, I am trained to look past the surface of things to find where the numbers and the people don't add up. For 5 years, I had been married to Thomas. From the very day we exchanged vows, his 24-year-old daughter, Chloe, had made it her life's mission to treat me like an invading outsider who was occupying a space she didn't belong in. She was a master of passive-aggressive remarks, but today, she wanted center stage. I was calmly carrying a heavy glass tray loaded with ice-cold drinks near the roaring commercial grill, entirely focused on not spilling anything. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Chloe deliberately and sharply took a massive step backward, slamming her shoulder directly into my chest to force a collision. The tray shattered on the bricks, sending ice and glass flying everywhere. But instead of apologizing, Chloe instantly erupted into a performance worthy of an Academy Award. She began sobbing hysterically, clutching her arm, and screaming at the top of her lungs so that the entire yard fell dead silent. She pushed me. Eleanor just tried to shove me face first into the burning hot grill. Every single conversation stopped instantly as 20 pairs of eyes locked right onto me. The echo of Chloe's scream still hung in the air as Thomas rushed over from the patio, his face twisted in immediate anger. He didn't ask what happened, nor did he look at the shattered glass by my feet. He simply wrapped his arms around Chloe, whispering comforts as she leaned into his chest, smirking at me over his shoulder. Then, Thomas turned his gaze toward me, his eyes colder than I had ever seen them in our 5 years of marriage. He stepped forward, gripped my arm with an icy, unforgiving pressure, and delivered the ultimate public humiliation. "Apologize to my daughter right now on your knees, Eleanor, or leave my sight completely," he hissed, his voice carrying clearly to every stunned relative standing in the yard. The deep, stinging hurt I expected to feel vanished instantly, replaced by a sudden, absolute clarity. Looking at his rigid posture, I realized Thomas would always willingly sacrifice my dignity and the truth just to appease his daughter's toxic, dramatic tantrums. I didn't argue, I didn't raise my voice, and I refused to give either of them the satisfaction of seeing a single tear. I slowly pulled my arm from his grip, looked him dead in the eye, and walked away in complete silence. As I unlocked my car, the quiet dignity of my departure felt like the first real breath I had taken all afternoon. The heavy silence of the highway faded as I pulled into our driveway, but the engine of my fury was just starting to rev. Instead of wasting a single tear on the drive back, I marched straight into Thomas's pristine home office, determined to check my personal banking accounts and corporate profiles. As a forensic accountant, I knew exactly where people hid their secrets when they thought no one was looking. While methodically searching through the hidden local directories of his private laptop, my eyes caught a series of suspicious, recent transaction histories. I opened the digital ledger, and as I read the line items, my blood turned to pure ice. Thomas had been systematically and secretly draining our joint business consultancy bank vaults, funneling tens of thousands of dollars to fund Chloe's lavish lifestyle and her rapidly failing clothing boutique. But the absolute biggest shock was hidden at the very bottom of the system. Thomas had recently gone behind my back and illegally forged my identity on a massive personal loan application. He hadn't just stolen our business revenue. He had used our primary marital home, the exact property I had entirely bought and paid for independently before I ever met him, as collateral to bail his daughter out of her self-inflicted financial ruin and total credit collapse. My professional training as a forensic accountant kicked in instantly, overriding any remaining sense of personal betrayal. I stared down at the forged signature displayed on the bank screens, noting the shaky replication of my handwriting with a cold, analytical precision. Thomas had vastly underestimated who he was dealing with. Because the deed to this house was registered solely in my name prior to our marriage, his unauthorized use of the property as loan collateral constituted major bank fraud and identity theft. I didn't waste a single minute. I immediately called my personal real estate attorney and a trusted forensic financial investigator, scanning and emailing them crisp, high-resolution copies of the illicit bank logs right from Thomas's own desk. Within an hour, my legal team had successfully flagged the transaction, triggering an immediate freeze on our joint business consultancy accounts and sending a formal fraud alert directly to the lending institution. The board was officially flipped. Next, I contacted an emergency locksmith who arrived at the house within 20 minutes, swiftly changing every single exterior lock to ensure my security. For the final touch, I grabbed a stack of heavy-duty cardboard moving boxes from the garage. Methodically and silently, I packed up every piece of Thomas's designer clothing, his expensive watches, and his personal memorabilia, neatly taping the boxes shut. By the time the afternoon sun began to dip below the horizon, his entire life was reduced to a neat row of cardboard containers lined up on the front porch, and my sharp legal counterstrike was perfectly locked and loaded. I stood by the grand window, entirely ready to reclaim my life, knowing the truth would soon completely dismantle their arrogant illusions of victory. The low rumble of Thomas's car finally echoed in the driveway hours later, cutting through the quiet twilight. Through the window, I watched him and Chloe get out of the vehicle, still laughing and casually joking about their public victory over me at the family barbecue. Their smiles vanished into instant confusion when Thomas stepped up to the front door, inserted his key, and realized it wouldn't turn in the newly replaced deadbolt. Chloe let out an annoyed sigh, but her expression shifted to utter bewilderment as her eyes drifted to the neat row of heavily taped cardboard boxes containing all of Thomas's designer clothes lined up on the concrete porch. I turned the handle and calmly opened the door just a few inches, entirely composed and dressed in a sharp business suit. Standing directly behind my left shoulder was a burly, uniformed private security guard, and to my right stood a certified legal courier holding a formal, stamped digital printout. Thomas took a step back, his eyes widening as he tried to process the scene. He opened his mouth to launch into a practiced, furious argument about his rights, but I didn't give him the chance to speak a single syllable. I didn't yell, and I didn't show an ounce of the anger they expected. Instead, I smoothly reached out and handed Thomas a comprehensive written notice detailing his frozen accounts, the active loan fraud investigation, and an immediate division of our marital assets. Thomas tried to bluster his way past the guard, his face turning a deep, angry shade of crimson as he clutched the legal text. "What is the meaning of this ridiculous stunt, Eleanor?" he boomed, attempting to use the same intimidating tone that had crushed me at the barbecue. "You are completely overreacting to a minor family misunderstanding. Stop being so incredibly dramatic. Open this door right now, and let us inside." I didn't say a word. Instead, I calmly pressed play on my phone, broadcasting a crystal-clear recording of a call where he explicitly discussed forging my name, followed by the official bank verification proving he had committed identity theft to bail out Chloe's drowning boutique. Chloe gasped, her theatrical confidence evaporating into pure panic as she realized her entire lifestyle was crumbling. She tried to yell at me, but I smoothly cut her off, informing her that the boutique's fraudulent funding was officially gone and the bank was already recalling the loan. Thomas slumped against the porch railing, the terrifying reality finally hitting him like a physical blow. His public betrayal at the barbecue hadn't broken me. It had cost him his home, his business reputation, and quite possibly his freedom. He looked down at the warnings in his hands, trembling as the security guard stepped forward to ensure they remained outside on the lawn. Chloe began to cry, begging Thomas to fix the situation, but he could only stare at me in absolute shock. The power dynamic had completely shifted, and they both knew there was no escaping the consequences. I watched their arrogant expressions completely dissolve into absolute desperation as the weight of their greed crashed down on them, leaving them stranded outside the very sanctuary they tried to steal away from me tonight forever. 3 months later, I stood in my lawyer's office, signing the final terms for an absolute, unconditional divorce. Because of the overwhelming forensic evidence of bank fraud and identity theft, Tom had business assets to avoid active criminal prosecution. Today, he lives in a cramped, drafty studio apartment on the edge of town, working exhausting 60-hour weeks at a low-level firm just to pay back his compounding debts, while Chloe's boutique faced complete liquidation and bankruptcy. As for me, I sold the business consultancy for a massive profit and used the money to start a fresh, beautifully peaceful life in a quiet coastal town where no one knows my name. Standing up for my dignity at that barbecue didn't just save my finances. It completely broke a toxic cycle of disrespect and gave me the strength to realize my true worth. Now, I am incredibly curious about all of you who have followed my journey until the very end. What would you have done if you found yourself standing in my exact shoes that afternoon? Have you ever had to face a similar betrayal from the people who were supposed to be your family? Right here on the final screen that will definitely surprise you. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in